influencer Yana Samsonova, who ate only exotic fruits, has died of starvation at age 39. The Russian national attracted millions of views after sharing her controversial diet online. Samsonova claimed she ate a completely raw vegan diet for the last 4 years, consuming just fruits, sunflower seed sprouts, fruit smoothies, and juices. The 39-year-old shared a chilling message on Instagram just days before she allegedly died of starvation. She shared this caption over a photo of herself: "Life is meaningless but worth living, provided you recognize it's meaningless."
Vegan, it should probably be for ethical reasons. That's easily the strongest argument for veganism. If you want a few more arguments for veganism and some against, take a look at a video we have. It's like 10 reasons to go vegan or something like that. We made it on this channel a few months ago on YouTube. It's pretty popular. It goes through, it's a really in-depth video. It's like an hour. It's really super minute philosophical points. I think towards the end you kind of get the idea that most of us could probably eat fewer animals that think a lot and have feelings like pigs and cows. It sucks to kill them. So if you want to go more vegan, that's totally fine. If you want to go completely vegan, that's totally fine. But it shouldn't be for your health, because veganism is not a guarantee of health or even a marginal increase in health. It should be for things like ethics, right?
When I was bodybuilding, it was all about getting calories in, getting high protein. And I used to eat typically everything. And I found out in about 2005 that I was terribly allergic to dairy, and it affected my asthma, so I cut that out. And then in about 2010, I started training with Cesar Gracie, and the whole team was under a gluten-free diet. Most of the guys were vegetarians or pescatarians. And so I cut out red meat and I cut out pork in 2010. And then I was poultry since then, just poultry, dairy-free, gluten-free. And about 6-7 months ago, I completely cut the meat out of my diet and went just predominantly plant-based. But I do have fish a couple times a week, and I do eat eggs.
Back now, it'll say plant-based, but I read labels. When I turn it on the back and look at the label, I'm like, half of that ain't plants. How can this be plant-based? The trickery that they put in the system now, how they doubled up food and convinced us that we're eating healthy, but we're not eating healthy, and we don't understand that the damage that we're doing to our bodies. So many symptoms, we pacify them. I got a headache. Headache is normal. But you don't have a Excedrin deficiency. You got a problem. That's your body telling you something is wrong. You go to
3, 2, 1. But here's the scary part. It's not going to stop. You see it every day on social media. Your friend just became a vegan, and they start proselytizing about how great this diet is and how well they're doing on it, and how if you don't change your ways right now, somehow the planet is going to end in 2 years.
The reason that we created it is because we wanted to address the greatest environmental threat that humans have ever faced.
A quick Google search will let you know that the vegan diet is now everywhere.
I just don't want to contribute to the exploitation and the suffering and the murder of all these innocent animals anymore.
Listen.
It's here, it's on. This is why you book a beach resort, so the whole family can get on board with the fun. Booking.com, booking.yeah.
When I was a kid, we goofed on this whole idea of veganism. It's not a sustainable diet. 80% of people who go on vegan diets stop the diet within 3 months. We're getting all these people talking about the vegan diet as if it's the best way to eat.
I always try to, tap into something that's going to better me, whether as an athlete, as a parent, as a person. I'm vegan now.
Oh! Okay, well, let's look at it. Eating French fries, vegan. Pasta, vegan. Sugar, vegan.
So this is unhealthy vegan food right here. This one you're about to have is called the Mac Daddy.
You're telling me vegan people eat the same stuff as we do?
Okay, so no one in their right mind would ever consider the foods I just mentioned as being healthy. There are a lot of great foods you can eat on a vegan diet. Broccoli comes to mind. So does kale, if you want to actually eat kale. Your basic carnivore or meat eater will say a vegan diet can't possibly be healthy. How could it? You can't get all the vitamins by not eating meat. The big one that everyone likes to throw around is B12. Vegans would say not true. You could just take a multi-cap every day and get all the vitamins you need. That would be great.
Vitamin B12, a nutrient largely absent in plants, was not available in exogenous vitamin form until 1947.
We didn't even learn how to extract vitamins until the early 1900s. So it was impossible to be a vegan, say in the 1800s, or any time in history before that.
Let's just take the amino acids, the fats, from another source and recreate those. So we're taking the animal entirely out of the equation.
So let's say you go on a vegan diet and you're eating your fake meat. Here's a list of everything you would have to take in supplements just to make it a well-rounded, healthy diet.
Vitamin B12, iron, calcium, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, and protein.
Now you might be saying some of these fake meats do have some of these vitamins. Well, yes, the Beyond Burger has less than 1% of a few of them and claims to have protein. But it turns out that plant protein is not digested as effectively as it is from meat. So you're not actually using that protein as effectively, but we'll get to that later. It doesn't matter what the truth is because pop culture is into this.
There's a responsibility for me to try and teach and show other people what I've learned.
We're hearing it from politicians.
My veganism is a much better way to accord myself with my values.
You support changing the dietary guidelines.
Yes.
You know, the food pyramid. What people
Yes. Yes.
to reduce red meat specifically.
Yes, I would.
They're telling us that not only is eating a vegan diet okay, they're telling us it's the way we are meant to eat.
I'm more active. I'm not as sluggish.
It takes less water, less energy.
And then there's the argument for sentient beings. No one wants to see an animal die so that we can live.
What you got there, bud?
Yeah. One of the arguments on the vegan side is, okay, yes, we are part of the food chain, but if we could manufacture something in order not to let sentient beings die, wouldn't that be better? Well, yes, it would be better. But is that really actually the truth? Because you became vegan, because you're eating fake meat, does that mean a sentient being didn't die? Well, that's something we'll have to look at later.
There's nothing acceptable about torturing, raping, and murdering a being that doesn't want to be killed.
When you look at Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger, you're being sold a bill of goods. You're being told that, hey, this is better for you. It's way better than meat.
The choice on the Burger King menu isn't between this and this, right? But between this and this. And in that case, it's a no-brainer.
We made a point of making sure that the protein content and the protein quality, actually the protein quality of our burger is higher than the protein quality of beef from a cow.
What is usually being offered is protein. We like to talk about protein. We like to talk about the protein transition and how animal protein is supposed to be bad and plant protein is supposed to be superior, but that is extremely reductionist.
This is Frederick Lacroix. He's a professor at Brussels University and he's a food scientist and technologist.
A piece of meat or a piece of cheese or an egg is about much more than just protein. It contains a whole spectrum of vitamins and minerals, but also a lot of bioactive compounds that you will not find in the imitation products.
Protein from plants and protein from animals are not created equally. Animal proteins are complete proteins, which means they contain essential amino acids our muscles need to grow, repair, and function. They are also more digestible than plant proteins, making them easier to absorb.
That is problematic because, say, vitamin B12 or other B vitamins that are naturally occurring in meat, many people cannot absorb those vitamins and minerals in their supplemental form. My name is Nina Teichels. I am a science journalist and author, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit group called the Nutrition Coalition. You may think that you're getting vitamin B, but your body is not absorbing it well. And that's true for many people.
When you look at
Impossible Burger and companies like that, they use a lot of novel proteins. In other words, things in their meat that we really can't even fully understand.
This is Dr. Tony Hampton, a board-certified doctor in family medicine and obesity.
And I'm really a big fan of teaching my patients to eat real food, so why would I, transition them to a diet where they're eating artificially prepared food or processed food?
And you have to start from material that is not all that suitable for that, basically. So you need lots of processing to get there.
Be an activist to know that something has to change. The huge amount of meat we consume accelerates climate change, endangers our health, and causes billions of animals to suffer. Only a small minority of people believe that everything in the meat industry is fine, and just 1/5 of people are opposed to a complete ban on factory farming. But humans are fickle. Most of us are deeply affected when we see images of animals in distress. A part of us feels like him. We hear dying pigs screaming and demand change immediately. But another part of us reacts just like people on the other side. The steak tastes a little worse today, but still far too tasty to do without. So how are we supposed to change the world when we can hardly change ourselves?
Once I picked up a chicken.
I'm Yulia, and I saw someone get spit on by a llama.
Project Day at a Berlin school.
I'm Ruben, and I held a little baby goat in my arms.
Class 5B will spend the day looking at the relationship between humans and animals.
My grandma's neighbor has very cute rabbits, and they always nibble on our sleeves.
Yes, very nice. I'm Friederike, and I once put sunscreen on a little pig.
Friederike Schmitz is convinced young people are the key to changing the conditions in livestock farming.
My goal isn't to convince you of my opinion or something. It's about you getting information and thinking for yourself what you think.
She sees children as future consumers, young citizens who will one day choose the kind of society they want to live in.
Meine Hoffnung ist, dass wir die Nutztierhaltung hierzulande oder in den Industrienationen.
My hope is that we will abolish livestock farming in this country or in industrialized countries, and that we will do so in the next few years or decades. Whether that's realistic? I always find that a funny question, because it's just not at all realistic to go on as we are now. We are in the middle of a climate crisis. Of course, we have to completely transform society in order to have any chance of continuing to live reasonably well here on this planet.
They start with two big circles.
If it's a need that pigs and humans have, then you can sort of hang that here in the middle.
After just a few cards, it becomes apparent that it's the middle that fills up the fastest. Finding needs that differentiate humans from pigs is harder than expected.
Notice anything? Anything you would change?
Curiosity should come in the middle.
And the rest of you? Is it something pigs want too, or just humans? Indeed, pigs are very curious, even more curious than dogs.
First, students see what pigs who are left to themselves will do. Then comes the inevitable contrast. At various stations, the children explore how pigs actually live when they're farmed.
Must that be bad? That's totally...
they try out how much space they would have as farmed piglets.
Can you guys back up if you want? No.
They learn that sows are kept in pens they can't turn around in for weeks, and that most piglets only live a few months.
So how do you think that feels for the pigs?
If we were trapped there, I think we would have killed ourselves in the barn. If we know that we're going to die anyway in the next few years.
Es gibt keine neutrale Darstellung. Sobald man eine Realität darstellt, muss man...
There's no way to show it neutrally. As soon as you show reality, you need to choose information. Maybe we choose the more negative information instead of the positive. We don't say that the pigs... I mean, it's hard to find any positive information. We don't say the piglets have it nice and cozy under the heat lamp. That's what the Farmers Association says. We say the piglets can nurse from their mother, but the mother can't take care of them. They are taken away after a few weeks.
They can never get outside. They can't root around in the ground. They never bathe in a stream. They can only take a few steps back and forth and never walk across a field.
Wir wählen diese eher kritischen Informationen aus.
We choose this negative information because it's relevant for ethical reflection. Yes, if everything were wonderful, we wouldn't need to talk about it at all. But we need to talk about the problems. There are many people who decide not to eat meat for these reasons. And there are many people who still eat meat, even though many of them know how the animals are doing. What could their reasons be?
Well, I do a lot of sports at home. I have a fitness trainer, and I need that for my diet. So I need the iron that's in meat.
Because I think it's delicious.
We buy a lot of meat, but only organic.
We eat it at our grandma's, and it's kind of a tradition when we're at grandma's.
Tradition, great.
Ich würde schon sagen, dass sich die gesellschaftliche
I
Stimmung...
would say public opinion is shifting in such a way that it's becoming clearer and clearer that livestock farming can't go on like this. Of course, most people still eat meat, but at the same time, most people have also understood there's a problem with that.
damit ein Problem gibt.
I thought it was really hard to watch. I had always thought at organic pig farms there was much more space, and they took much more care of the animals.
But it was also very frightening how little is done for a pig.
And now you see that many animals are also tortured. So I try to eat less meat. I just thought it was stupid. I didn't know that before. The story behind it. But now we know it.
At lunchtime, the salami stays in the lunchbox. But Friederike Schmitz knows people who grow up in a world of animal products don't change their habits in a day.
Ich glaube schon, dass das bei den Kindern auch was
I do believe it moves the children somehow, and there's a lasting effect. A few thoughts, a few seeds have been sown, something's been triggered. Yet at the same time, we also notice in the workshops how powerful habit can be. On the one hand, children are totally shocked about how badly the pigs are kept on farms. But later, when it comes to whether or not to eat meat, for many of them, the most they can do is to try and eat less meat. Of course, I'd like to see more committed reactions. So it's not just that I think it's a shame what the children often say at the end, measured against my own opinions, but measured against what they themselves said 2 hours earlier.
Gemessen an dem, was sie selber 2 Stunden vorher gesagt haben. Also das können die sich in dem Moment
They
einfach gar
simply can't imagine at that moment that they could no longer eat
kein
meat.
Fleisch mehr essen könnten. So.
It's not in the realm of possibility for them.
Möglichen für die.
In Mexico City. I was 15 years old when I started working in this place.
My name's Carl Scott. In my early 20s, I worked in Pukeuri slaughterhouse.
My name's Doug. I've got a history of working in animal agriculture. I worked in 3 slaughterhouses as a butcher and a poultry farmer.
My father was a hunter, and he was a slaughterhouse worker. Dead animal bodies were just a routine thing. I grew up around dead and dying animals. Honestly, my earliest childhood memory, I'm not joking, is of a dying animal. My father, he shot a duck. Gosh, I must have been 3 years old or something. And this duck flapping, panicking, coming towards me. and my younger brother, who must have been all of about 2, and this duck was panicking and trying to escape, and I was terrified, and my dad was laughing, and he thought this was hilarious.
At 16 years old, I left school, and they had a scheme at the time. If you didn't have a job, you were offered this thing called a youth training scheme. I told them I wanted to work with animals. I thought maybe there'd be some kind of farm work, like husbandry kind of thing, looking after animals, or working at a dog shelter. Strangely, they thought it was appropriate to put me in as a butcher. So I was to be an apprentice butcher, with half of my time spent at butchers and the other half at an abattoir.
I got this job through a friend. She was older than me. She was like 17. And it caught my attention because he used to be at work that he used to start at 3 in the morning and finish like around 7 in the morning. So I would have enough time to go to work and then go to school.
My 20s, that was the 1990s, and unemployment was very high in New Zealand at that time. And my father had been working at Pukeuri Freezing Works for many years, and he just happened to know the personnel officer at that plant. His name was Charlie Horn, and he spoke to Charlie one day and said, "Look, Charlie, my son's looking for work. Can you get him in?" "Oh, I don't know, Dave. I'll see what I can do." But he did. He got me in. I didn't really know what to expect, and it was a bit of a steep learning curve the first week or two. But yeah, it was not a glamorous place to work. It was noisy and smelly, blood and guts, literally blood and guts, and all these dead bodies everywhere. It certainly wasn't my dream job. And I remember for the first week I'd be trying to go to sleep at night, and I'd have all these images flashing through my mind of all these dead bodies, and I worked on a job called the gut trays, which was about as glamorous as it sounds. Pretty horrible job, pulling apart all the internal organs of the sheep. But it only took, that's the funny thing, it only took about a week or two and it became my new normal.
The very first thing they did before they even started me there was they had me witness the slaughter of a cow. I think they must have been just gauging my reaction to see if I'd be appropriate to work there, because I presume lots of people would see that and not be able to handle it. I remember feeling I'd got to not show any reaction because I needed work, and I tried to hold in anything emotional, any emotional response to that. Seeing it for the first time was very difficult and shocking.
I didn't have any expectation because, like, I wasn't thinking about work, or I didn't know nothing about killing chickens. Like, I was just thinking, oh, it's a job. We'll see when we get there. They hired me first as a person to go and clean the chickens once they are dead. It was pretty stressful just because I had to, like, touch the chicken once they come out from the hot water and the body is, like, super hot. So it was pretty stressful because they don't even give you, like, gloves. And after a while, like, the person that was on the kill floor wasn't real, like, good at killing the chickens. They used to be alive still, so they switched me to the kill floor.
The more I saw, the less reaction I got used to it, I guess you could say. So I would the way I dealt with it was, at the time I was really into my boxing and my weightlifting, so I saw it as a really good way of keeping strong and fit. If I was the guy who had to hold the hook through the cow's nose, so you're pulling up quite a heavy animal, so it'd be like using the cables in a gym machine to do a lateral turn. So I'd be thinking of that exercise rather than the action that I was performing.
There were moments when I saw things and I thought, oh, I don't like that. That's not nice. And on a couple of occasions, I didn't work on the kill floor, but a couple of times I went down to the kill floor and watched the animals being killed. And that was not nice. That kind of drove it home that this is an ugly business that I'm part of. At the time, I hardened up and just dealt with it. And sometimes reflecting back, I realised, gosh, what I saw there was disturbing. And I wonder how much it affected me that I didn't even realise.
injuries were multiple times a day. It depends on the level of injury. So, for example, when I first started in the slaughterhouse, I'd have to catch sheep, and they basically you pick them up, present them upside down on a rack, and while you're holding it, someone would stun it with electric shock and then cut its throat. And the amount of times I got electric shocks from the clamps hitting my hand rather than the sheep, I lost count several times a day, every day.
They show me how to kill the chickens with scissors or with a knife. You know, and with the knife it's pretty dangerous because you open the beak of the chickens and you place the knife and you just pull the knife back. And sometimes this person actually got injured because when you pull the knife to cut the throat, sometimes it will go through the chicken's head and it will cut your hand. So that was super dangerous. I was like, that's not for me. So I would use the scissors, which you open the beak of the chicken and just cut in the throat, and that was it. I did get injured one time when I was doing the knife. Like, I grabbed the chicken's head and I pulled the knife, but the chicken just moved the head, and so my hand was trying to grab it, and I punched myself on my elbow with the knife, so I still had the scar.
I saw a lot of injuries. It was very, very common. One thing I did see that was quite disturbing, there was a pelting machine, they called it. It was this big machine that pulled the skins off the sheep. And one of the workers got his hand caught in the machine, and he was screaming, the whole time. And he had some people that were trying to comfort him and calm him. And it took about 20-30 minutes. They had to get the engineers up to come up and undo some bolts and partially dismantle the machine to get this guy's hand out of it.
I'd say I was probably an alcoholic, and I drank heavily from the age of about 17. So, which was, I started working in the abattoir at 16. It was connected with the job in a way that you just, I guess you got to the end of the day and you wanted to forget what you've been doing. I'd say pretty much everyone I worked with was drinking heavily. If you're violent in a workplace and then someone's potentially going to be aggressive towards you, it's going to be in for a shock when they realise how far you can go. I remember one guy, I hit him so hard, he just dropped down face forward, hit the floor, and as I walked away, I looked back maybe 100 yards further up the road. He was still flat on his face. No idea what happened to him, but it was a good punch, I guess. But all kinds of things like broken noses, blood, whatever. And when you've seen the stuff you're seeing in a slaughterhouse, it's nothing. So I wouldn't have any kind of emotional response to the violence.
I think that my boss, the owner of the slaughterhouse, he used to suffer a lot with that because he was a very violent person. He will always be drinking, using drugs, like abusing his wife, and nobody can say absolutely nothing back to him. Sadly, his wife, we witnessed how sometimes she would like show up with big glasses, black glasses, and we already knew because, she was being abused by the husband.
I've seen people break down. I've even seen someone kill themselves. So it's pretty, and I know of people who've tried to kill themselves, me included. There was a guy, I won't name him out of respect for his family, but he'd shown signs of depression much of the time I worked with him. He'd proposed to his girlfriend, who was only 17, so younger than him, and she said, no, I'm not ready to get married, understandably for a young girl, and that was it. He focused on that and thought his life wasn't any longer worth living. He went to his mother's house, poured petrol all over his head and his body, drank it, and when she answered the door, he lit himself up. Oh. It actually took him 2 to 3 weeks to die.
Oh my God.
I think people have this bizarre notion that an animal just wanders in, not knowing what's going on, and someone sort of sneaks up behind it, kind of. Don't want to make it sound funny because it's not, and suddenly it's dead. That's not how it happens. They know. They literally know, and the evidence is clear to anyone who witnesses it that they're about to die.
I watched them coming into the building, and some of them were almost bemused. They were like, what's all this? And curious even. But most of them were very, very frightened, terrified even. They didn't quite understand what was happening, but they knew it wasn't good. They didn't want to be there. You could tell the looks on their face, wide-eyed and terror, and looking around like this, and shaking and trying to back out, to get out.
If you're being shepherded towards your ultimate demise, you're not going to want to go calmly. This is something that I've always held with me, that there are three, well possibly four, but three main responses to when an animal's about to be killed. One is the sort of fear, where it'll be trembling, cowering and trying to hide. The second is probably trying to flee, so it'll try and run away. And the third one is to fight. Whatever the reaction of those three primary responses, is going to frustrate and annoy a worker at the wrong time on the wrong day. And quite often you'd see someone hitting an animal inappropriately, not that there's an appropriate way to hit an animal, but hitting using the bolt gun on parts of the body that they shouldn't do. So instead of just going for the brain, they might be jogging it along by shooting it in the backside, or electrocuting it in the wrong place. So you're only supposed to electrocute the pigs or the sheep on the side of the temples, whereas they were using it on their haunches or the back, the shoulders, even the testicle, anything, just to get it to move along. One of the reasons people are frustrated enough to do that kind of violence is because they're stressed, and they've got to process X amount of animals in X amount of time, because the next lot are coming in. So if they don't get it done, they're going to have a backlog and they're going to have to work later.
I remember one time seeing a sheep. It had escaped from the kill floor, and we were on the top story, like 3 or 4 stories up, and it had run all the way up there, and it was running around fully conscious and aware, this little lamb, and panicking. And you can imagine being that lamb, panicking and seeing all these dead bodies and blood. The smells would have been horrific, and most of the people there were laughing and thinking this was hilarious, and I just couldn't laugh. I thought, this is not funny. That lamb is not having a good day. It's horrible.
There was absolutely no guideline. Nobody say, oh, you're not supposed to do this to the chicken, or you're not supposed to kick them, or you're not supposed to treat them this way. No, that was, the guideline was just to get the job done. Like, you had to finish, to kill these 800 chickens by this time. For when the chickens come on crates, they're all cramped up. There is like 30 chickens in one crate. And then the workers just take them out without warning. They just pull them out and toss them in the room. And then somebody else come and try to catch them again, bite the leg and place it in a cot. They don't have idea what is really happening.
Well, and this is the most disturbing things I saw the whole time there, was when animals weren't stunned properly and they died horrible deaths. So I'll start with the sheep. They would come through this hole in the wall and they would spray the sheep with this mist of water. So they would spray them with water, and these 2 metal plates would clamp up against their bodies, and an electric current would go through the sheep's body, and you watch them, their muscles would tense up. They go bang like this, and the sheep would go like this, just tense. And what was supposed to happen was the sheep would go unconscious and then have their throats cut. But sometimes the electrical stunning didn't work, so sometimes the pedals would go back again. They would spray them with water again. The plates would come up again. They would shock them again, and then maybe on the second time the sheep would go unconscious. I remember at least 1 or 2 occasions they had to shock the sheep 3 times before it went unconscious, and a lot of them regained consciousness just prior to having their throats cut. So then this poor sheep would be grabbed by the wool, taken back out into the yards, and had to go through the process again. Now you imagine that the first time you don't know, you are the sheep coming through, you don't know what to expect, you don't know what's happening, but the second time you know what's happening and you know it's not good. God, I can't even imagine how horrible that was for them. And this didn't just happen, maybe 1 in 1,000. This was quite common. A lot of the sheep had to go through twice, and some of them regained consciousness as they were having their throats cut or shortly afterwards. I saw that happening. And you would see these animals, they'd be hooked up by their hind legs, and they were thrashing around like this, their bodies, and you could tell that they had regained consciousness.
In a small-scale slaughterhouse I was working in, the first one I worked in, stunning would be missed, so a pig would have its throat cut without being first stunned, or the stunning's worn off, or in a worst case scenario, which is where the screams come from mainly, is where both have been missed and it's gone into the boiling tank, fully conscious, not stabbed, not stunned, and just been, well, you can imagine the kind of pain that animal must be going through to be lowered into a tank so hot that the water will boil the hair off its hide. So that is probably the worst memory I've got.
I don't know, you notice when I'm talking, it's like, oh my God, like I'm holding my tears, because it's a terrible experience. Like, even though I didn't know nothing back there, it's something that I create, that I cause the harm to all these animals. And just like most of the time, it hits me when I go to vigils to give water to pigs, to see the baby cows, to try to do something to protect them. It totally hits me. Like, I was doing so much wrong before. And sadly, I cannot change that. I cannot change that, but I'm trying to change things for the generations that are coming behind me.
Already killing 1.3 million people per year.
Should we go vegan to save the planet?
This film is produced in partnership with Wicked Kitchen, a chef-driven plant-based brand that's crafting delicious food for meat eaters and vegans